Welcome back into another episode of the Spaceman 2.0 Phoenix Truth Rising Show, here to help you grow in the knowledge and wisdom of truth, and the truth will set you free, with the best history lesson and spiritual insights on the planet, exposing the Illuminati's plan of world conquest and control, which is the death knell to the New World Order. So, continuing on with the timeless messages and history lessons from HATONN, even this one, it's from 1992, and it's telling you about the Pope going in for repairs and what happened to our Pope just recently. Even now they're saying, was he really the true Pope? But all in all, Ratzinger was still alive. You never had two popes alive at the same time. There's really three alive at the same time by 2018, I think, when Ratzinger passed away, which is the Gray Pope, Orsini, Pepe Orsini, they say. So with that being said, let's not be lost by the mainstream media, but all the heads of state go into Camp David for their tune-ups, for their mind, to even Ariana Grande, who I think had to do a couple things to be sacrificed, Mac Miller, to get to where she is now. But she even says, oh, I go in for a memory adjustment or something like that. And yeah, I just let go of memories I don't want to. And so they have the technology now to actually get rid of memories. So they go in for these special Camp David exposés, and then they come out and they're now the character that they want them to be. So they always have these two. Then they're infused hypnotically with a spirit, and that's another story. And that's why they change and become demonic actually on stage. A lot of these musicians and artists in the Hollywood saga. So that being said, let's get back on into Divine Plan Volume 2 with more on underground bases, the Sumerians, and was Jesus a Jew? So starting off, Pope in the hospital for repairs. Is it not interesting that right now the Pope, set up by the adversary for the current position, is now going to be hospitalized for repairs of some sort of thing relative to his assassination attempt many years past? Chelles, if you miss this one, you are blind as salamanders. So again, the Pope is always set up and he's used, and they put the guy they want in office. Earthquakes. Indeed, this yesterday earthquake in Mojave, California was important. Recall I warned you about any quakes on or near that Garlock Fault must be watched most carefully. Note further that it was, as were the prior two major quakes, over strategic areas of underground facilities, and the side quakes were not distractors but very, very on target, such as the massive underground facility at 29 Palms Marine Base, Ridgecrest, China Lake Naval Weapons Center, and largest of all, the California Underground Secret Facilities, and now California City, right at Edwards Dooryard. This indicates many things, but not the least of which is terminal backfeed amplifier contact. Well planned and well tested. Now. Note, other news bears a big show and tell of photon energy and even demonstrates the need for special extra darkened goggles and intense enhancement of recent photon laser beams, which are intended for use as aircraft thrust systems. Pay attention, and between the lines you will find all the confirmation of truth which you will need. Watch various players, and you will even find the culprits by what you are doing and where. By what they are doing and where. Sumerians. There is one assault against my scribe which I intend to put to rest right now. We are again bombarded by ones accusing us of stealing Zachariah Sitchkin material. What mean ye, readers and discounters? I have not even gotten into the erroneous conclusions of this author, and typical of the adversary, already the arrows fly. You are showing your own ignorance, and readers will not long be intimidated nor impressed by your rantings and ravings. Thank you, MMOL, for the following, which I shall simply copy, for this person went and did some homework. For you. The Sumerians, a lost civilization, found. About 30 years ago, archaeologists unearthed the civilization of the Sumerians. Sumeria was located just north of what was part of the Palestine bordering countryside. This region then became known as Mesopotamia. Much data more than 6,000 years old has been recovered and interpreted as the result of brilliant work by the authors of several books on Sumerians. They were able to decipher and spell out their language. The location of this find was at the place of Sumar in modern Iraq. Among the many branches of knowledge that have been enriched by the Sumerian text was that of astronomy. Answers to questions that astronomers and scientists have been unable to fathom in the course of our civilization were brought to light. From the Sumerian text, the history, customs, culture, and religion have become known. Unknown, it has been learned that Sumeria was overcome in a battle by the Hebrew tribe from south of their border, they being completely decimated and overrun by the Hebrews. A study of the Hebrew culture and religion and comparison with that of the Sumerians as revealed in their texts dating back thousands of years before any known history of the Hebrew tribe discloses the unmistakable truth that the Hebrew culture and religion had been taken over from the Sumerians and made the Hebrew culture and religion. In other words, the Hebrews had appropriated the culture and religion of the Sumerians and proclaimed that these newly found Sumerian accomplishments as their own, especially the religion from that time forward. In his book, Christ Was Not a Jew, the author states that the Galileans were descended from the Sumerians and were different from the Judeans to the south. The people of Galilee were not Hebrew, but in the course of time had adapted the Hebrew religion. We might even speculate that they had retained some remnants of the long-forgotten religion of Sumeria, the real origin of the Hebrew religion. The Hebrew religion became known as Judaism, and later actually only in the early 18th century were the Judeans called Jews. Let's read that again. The Hebrew religion became known as Judaism, and later actually only in the early 18th century were the Judeans called Jews. However, since that time, translators of the Bible have used the word Jew back to the beginning of the Bible, using it in place of Judean. I'd like to give credit to The Garden of HATONN, Volume 1 by Nora Boyles. There's only one volume, by the way, but she goes into the etymology of all the words and where the Hebrews came from and everything else according to that. Look at this, how well this book is done. Lineage of the Romanov family. Okay, and how the sovereigns of Russia and how the Bolshevik Revolution took them out in 1917. The early leaders of the Hebrew tribe, close to the time of their embracing the Sumerian religion, knew what they were about. They wrote their history and biblical stories to conform to their newfound religion, effectively blotting out the history of Sumeria, to whom had been given the knowledge of the true God thousands of years before that Sumeria had ever existed, was wholly forgotten. It can be concluded that the Jews knew in Christ's own time that he was not a Jew, and have known since then, but it has been a great advantage to the Jewish cause for them to further this belief, since it implies a prominent superiority of the Jew over the Christian subconsciously in the minds of Christians, while the Jew himself has continued as a group to despise Christianity. The Hebrew people were a tribe whose history is known only back a few centuries BC. They were not capable of the high civilization attained by the Sumerians. The religion of Sumeria was akin to Christianity in many aspects. End quote. This above writing was written and sent to me on June 24, 1992, and I thank you greatly, for Dharma is totally baffled by the information I give her, and after a few arrow piercings, she can get pretty upset with the world as it is, and HATONN. The next is equally informative and eye-opening, and you don't have to believe a bodiless voice or writing fingers. However, not to be lessened is the moving finger writes and having writ moves on, and the handwriting on the wall by a bodiless, armless hand. Ponder it, Chellas. Where there is smoke, there was actually some kind of fire. Christ was not a Jew. Excerpts from the Pontius Pilote's report. From official documents of historical records made in the days of Jesus Christ, the Arco volume in the Congressional Library in Washington, D.C., this eyewitness, Pontius Pilate, testified Jesus did not look, think, or act like a Jew. You also have to know, if you go and get hands on this document, that you will find the label Jesus to be explained as translated later. Also were errors made in reference to the Jews, as translated from Judeans. I simply want you to note this material is in the Congressional Library in Washington, D.C. What else has been kept from your eyes and ears? To Tiberius Caesar, Emperor of Rome, noble sovereign, greeting. Among the various rumors that came to my ears, there was one in particular that attracted my attention. A young man, it was said, had appeared in Galilee, preaching with a noble unction a new law in the name of the God that had sent him. At first I was apprehensive that his design was to stir up the people against the Romans, but my fears were soon dispelled. Izu, translated Jesus of Nazareth, spoke rather as a friend of the Romans than of the Judeans, erroneously translated Jews. One day in passing by the place, I observed in the midst of a group a young man who was leaning against a tree, calmly addressing the multitude. I was told it was Izu Emmanuel. This I could easily have suspected, so great was the difference between him and those listening to him. His golden-colored hair and beard gave to his appearance a celestial aspect. He appeared to be about 30 years of age. Never have I seen a sweeter or more serene countenance. What a contrast between him and his hearers, with their black beards and tawny complexions. Never have I read in the works of the philosophers anything that can compare to the maxims of Izu. One of the rebellious Judeans, so numerous in Jerusalem, having asked Izu if it was lawful to give tribute to Caesar, he replied, "Render unto Caesar the things that belong to Caesar, and unto God the things that are God's." I wrote to Izu requesting an interview with him at the Praetorium. He came. You know that in my veins flows the Spanish mixed with Roman blood, as incapable of fear as it is of weak emotion. When the Nazarene made his appearance, I was walking in my basilica, and my feet seemed fastened with an iron hand to the marble pavement, and I trembled in every limb, as does a guilty culprit, though the Nazarene was as calm as innocence itself. When he came up to me, he stopped, and by a signal sign he seemed to say to me, "I am here," though he spoke not a word. For some time I contemplated with admiration and awe this extraordinary type of man, a type of man unknown to our numerous painters, who have given form and figure to all the gods and heroes. There was nothing about him that was repelling in its character, yet I felt too awed and tremulous to approach him. "Izu," said I unto him at last, and my tongue faltered. "Izu of Nazareth, for the last 3 years I have granted you ample freedom of speech, nor do I regret it. Your words are those of a sage. I know not whether you have read Socrates or Plato, but this I know, there is in your discourses a majestic simplicity that elevates you far above these philosophers." "Your blood shall not be spilt," said I with deep emotion. "You are now precious in my estimation on account of your wisdom, that all the turbulent and proud Pharisees who abuse the freedom granted them by the Romans. They conspire against Caesar and convert his bounty into fear, impressing the unlearned that Caesar is a tyrant and seeks their ruin. Insolent wretches! They are not aware that the wolf of the Tiber sometimes clothes himself with the skin of the sheep to accomplish his wicked designs. I will protect you against them. My praetorium shall be an asylum, sacred both day and night." Izu carelessly shook his head. "I am your most obedient servant, Pontius Pilate." "Thank you, M. For perhaps others will now go seek further information and confirmation that we are not here to feed you more lies upon those already bringing you to the point of destruction. You will note that as the history of this time and passage is written, our work will be despoiled and mistranslated, but remaining will be the truth as set to print for later finding. We too will cease to bear the mark of Caesar's enemy, for we are not about Caesar and enemies. We are about our Father's work. I think it appropriate to interrupt this writing at this point to allow you to ponder on the points. We have a meeting this afternoon, and I must release Dharma to her tasks. As we sit to write again, we will probably move back to the clandestine, for I have now gained personal permission to publish other material of urgent importance. Then as we continue, we need to cover more on this divine plan and evolvement of man as you know him, and God as you don't know him. Blessings rest upon you, ones of truth. Salut, HATONN declare. So with that being said, may you ponder these words and remember that Aramaic was spoken by Izu Emmanuel in that day. And I'm sure he knew Hebrew as well because he was a learned man, a scholar, besides what else you can say about him. So thank you for tuning in. If you'd like a copy of this journal, please scroll down below and see how you can get one sent out to you for a donation, and I'll be happy to send one out to you. So again, thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back with another episode of the Spaceman 2.0 Phoenix Truth Rising show. And